Housekeepers who worked in casinos, hotels, what's the weirdest thing you walked into? Hotel worker. Had an American guy come into our hotel, meant to be staying for 3 days. Went into his room and never left the room in over 2 weeks. He kept phoning down to extend his stay. The strange thing was, he had the same routine every day. Around 8 AM, he would order 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes to be sent up to his room. He'd sign the check off to his room for the beers but had to pay cash for the cigarettes as they came from the hotel shop, which wasn't owned by the hotel, therefore wasn't able to charge to the room. The cigarettes came to around $11, and he would always give us a $20 note and told us to keep the change. Lunchtime rolls around, and again, 8 bottles of beer and 20 cigarettes. Come dinner time, again, another 8 beers, but 40 cigarettes this time, assuming to keep a stock of when the shop closed at nighttime. This happened every day he was staying with us. No one ever saw him leave the hotel, so assumed he had a stack of $20 notes to pay for his cigarettes. He also instructed housekeeping not to clean his room. When he eventually left, the maid was greeted with hundreds of empty beer bottles. The bin was half full with cigarette ends and ash, and the room was left remarkably clean, albeit smelling awful. We tried to research the guy, but could only find he was part of an American broadcasting company. It was a long time ago and can't remember, so assumed he was over here to lie low. He checked out, paid off his bill, didn't even bother to check the bill, into a taxi and never to be seen again. I was a housekeeper at a dive of a hotel in Chico, CA in the late 90s. A week or so before, a local homeless woman had stuck her arm in a tiger's cage, a circus that was traveling through town, and got mauled. That weekend I was cleaning rooms and knocked on the door of a room paid for by a local charity organization. It turned out the guest was in the middle of sexy time. Quickly realizing it wasn't a good time to clean the room, I said I would come back later. To my dismay, the woman opened the door and asked me to join her and her friend. I declined. She then reached out and grabbed me by the arm and tried to drag me in. Her arm was covered in bandages and lacerations. It was the woman who had been tiger mauled. I yanked my arm free and ran away. I'll never forget what her shredded bandage hand looked like. I worked in a casino where I watched a middle-aged man literally shake a solid turd down his pant leg, sit back down and continued on his machine. I turned around with backpack vacuum on and went to my lunch break. I didn't get paid enough to pick up strangers. It found a dead body under the bed. Manhattan. Well, this blew up. Here you go. Not me, but my friend from Ukraine worked at a crappy casino hotel in Wendover, Nevada, because they would sponsor his work visa. He wasn't a housekeeper but would have to do maintenance in rooms. He said one day he went to a room where the people had already checked out and there was a chicken in the room. Like a live chicken. Just chilling there. Maybe the story is funnier when he tells it with his accent. Why use chicken in room? A couple came to this luxury dude ranch I worked at and spent over $5,000 to stay there only to not come out of their room the entire time. Went in to clean the room when they left and saw incredibly expensive and opened alcohol and boxes of 6 toys around the room. On the bed they left a note that said enjoy. What? We threw out the toys. Who the duck would use a you said 6 toy left by an unknown person, and got hammered that night. I worked for a hotel chain in Colorado and one day my co-worker and I went to strip a bed and the bed was full of oranges. The dresser oranges. Side table. Cans of mandarin oranges. Not exactly shocking or disgusting, but it was weird. Worked housekeeping for a few weeks. Guess the weirdest, it was a 70-ish couple left their room so I went to clean it. Big bottle of Kai and a dildo so big even Ron Jeremy would have been jealous left out on the bed. Cleaned a room that contained both a deck of Uno cards and a knockoff deck of Ono cards. I think about this question every time I go to Vegas. Vegas housekeeping would be the highest rated reality show ever. I worked as a concierge for an upscale hotel, so, naturally, because there wasn't a line for my desk, I fielded complaints regularly. One day a woman, very nice and patient, Rhea, calmly explained to me that a 5-year-old opened the door to their bathroom and there was a housekeeper pooping in there. The housekeeper and the boy screamed so loudly that I had already gotten noise complaints from the adjacent rooms. Needless to say, That family got a free night and an upgrade. Edit. Gold. You all made my day. We had a hotel room one time and checked in around 3-4ish. Can't remember what hotel it was. When we walked in, one of the housekeepers was asleep in the chair. Apparently had taken a rest and checked out for who knows how long. We woke her up when we came in the room. She was very apologetic and took her cart and stuff with her right away. We never said anything to the staff or saw her again. The room was all clean and set up, so nothing to complain about. This is related but not exactly the question. And my wife and I were looking at wedding venues. One we went to was a hotel. The event manager wanted to take us up and show us the honeymoon suite. She opened the door, and there were two old men, like 60s 70s, shirtless, drinking vodka in the room. She was so extremely embarrassed and apologetic. She was very sweet too, but you could tell she was so mad at whoever screwed that up for her. We didn't choose the place, wasn't why, but I hadn't thought about that in a while, and figured someone else may get a kick out of it. Someone I know worked housekeeping at a casino. He walked in on a guy smearing it over the walls with his bare hands. He was pissed that he lost money and thought he was justified to do it. Housekeeping called security. He was charged and banned. Not my story, but a friend was a maid at a cheap hotel in our university town. She has a bunch of gross and weird stories, but the most insane is when she came into work and found a full abandoned meth lab in the bathroom of one of the rooms. A manager made her clean up a bunch of trash from the different ingredients and scrub chemical stains that must have been left by spills. Apparently the room smelled like a bad science experiment, or just normal meth, and the management refused to get any police involved. I imagine they believed it would discourage their regular clientele. I believe she quit very soon after. Oh, I got one. I was a night auditor though. This one starts out benign enough. My NA shift starts, and I have a small line. It's Saturday and we're near a couple of casinos. Not unusual. A very polite man checks in and rents a top level suite for him and his wife. I get him in and start checking in the next couple. Being distracted, I barely noticed the previous couple come back in. Only that the wife was partially obscured by the luggage cart, and I remember thinking to myself, that's an ugly woman. The night is quiet and I leave. I come in the next night to hear what unfolded after I left. The couple never came back down to check out and have not been seen since. When housekeeping entered the room, they immediately alert the FDM. Every surface of the room is covered in lube. The bed, the couch, the jacuzzi, even the mini fridge is covered in bottles and bottle of lube and baby oil. We know for sure it's lube because a dozen bottles are left in the tub. But wait, there's more. In addition to the lube, there is a rather large horse dildo left behind with thick black scuff marks and cracked down the center. My FDM, in her infinite wisdom, decides that they must have been junkies and this dildo is where they are hiding their needles. She decides to pick it up to open it, safety reasons. But when she does, all that falls out is a rather impressive motor that has been burned out. The icing on this cake comes when they review the security tape. The wife is clearly a man in a wig. It's a big burly dude wearing a cheap wig. Not me, but my husband used to manage a hotel in our town. Our town is very industrial in Alberta. That gave the town away right there. So when oil was high, all the hotels were full of drillers and rig pigs and frack boys. So one morning, the housekeepers were cleaning a room and saw a 10 inches thick dildo with ribbed edges. Metal, I believe they thought it was. Course no one touched it to confirm. Left it where it was and finished cleaning the room. Older tough looking guy was renting the room. No one said anything and he didn't say anything either. This was about 10 years ago. I was an IT guy for a casino. Got a call that a guest couldn't get his device connected to the Wi-Fi, so I had to go up and give him a hand. Come to get his tablet connected. He's in the room. Older guy, 60 plus, wearing a pair of gold booty shorts. He's got 3 girls. IDs meant they had to be 21, but they weren't much more than that, in there with him. Thongs and fuzzy high-heeled slippers. Topless. Shameless. They want to connect the iPad so he can play some video to go along with the game they're playing. Couple bags of toys and tubes of stuff scattered all around the room. 2 of the girls were getting impatient and already playing with each other by the time I got there. I've got my own kinks, so who am I to judge? Got his stuff connected. and they were able to get his movie and got it playing on the TV in the room. He tipped me a small baggie of Molly and a couple $100, all in $50. I took the money and let him keep the drugs. Find out later, he was a VIP card member and typically dropped $20 grand or so on the tables. Edit. Could someone else make a snarky comment about X and Molly? I had no idea they were the same drug, because I've been clean for at least 22 years. I used to do ecstasy back in the 90s, as a pill. I recognized the pills in the bag. He said it was a bag of Molly, so I assumed it was a mixed bag of goodies. Had a teacher who was the manager of a Marriott in Germany for a while. She has wild stories. Once found an anaconda in the bathroom, wrapped around the shower curtain pole. Pulled naked devil worshippers out of the pool at 3 AM when the pool closed and they refused to get out. They weren't even guests. Saw the janitor with a wheelbarrow, a hose, a shovel. He went somewhere, went to lunch and came back. After his lunch she followed him and asked what was up. He didn't speak good German and just said cleaning up African lady leg. Turned out some lady had jumped from the top floor of one side of the building. Hotel was kind of like an L shape. One side higher than the other, hit the emergency ladder on the way down and had her leg torn off before becoming mush on the roof of the other side of the building. He had shoveled most of her into the wheelbarrow at this point. Was just working on getting her leg unstuck from the ladder. Edit. Bad grammar. The janitor did not lynch anybody, I think. Also, thanks for the silver anon. Was on a youth trip with my church. Guys stayed in one room, girls stayed in the other. All us bored kids start looking around the room. Yeah, no, because kids. And we found a nug of weed under the bed. Super big find for a couple of church kids. We go to tell the girls what we found and they go on to tell us they did the same thing and found blood all over the wall. TLDR. Found weed and blood. I walked in on a couple sleeping on the bathroom floor of a hotel room in the hotel I work for. The bed was untouched and everything was normal with that one exception. This couple made a hasty retreat from a 5-star hotel I was working for. They left an entire brick of sugar on the bathroom counter. I can answer this one. Worked at a huge water park resort. I was doing a late shift at a time of year when the resort was almost empty. So, tired of knocking on all the doors, I just barged into the rooms. To clarify, I always knocked, but I was getting tired after 20 or so rooms without a guest. Come this room in the 4th floor. I walk in and there's an old, heavy guy feasting on a bucket of fried chicken. Lights off, in front of the TV. He stared at me for a couple of seconds and I apologized before he could say anything. Left the room immediately. I later found out that room was supposed to be vacant. I have no idea where he came from, why he was there or how he got there. I don't know about them, but I was working on a job in a shady part of Yakima, WA called Yakima. We were working 12-14 hours days. I just left my gun in the drawer and I'm not a cluttery person, so I just empty my pockets into the nightstand drawer every night. One day I left my gun, a roll of duct tape, some big zip ties and a knife in the drawer. When I came back, room was clean and the drawer was organized nicer. After that, the housekeeping lady would scuttle away upon my visage. My grandfather used to work at a posh resort where many celebrities checked in. He told us that Bill Cosby always trashed the room and left behind a huge mess with no tip for the housekeepers. This was back when Cosby was viewed as America's dad. Now it doesn't seem strange at all. I used to work on a military base as a housekeeper. I was there for about a month and a half. One time someone checked out early, so I had a room added to my list. Knocked, went in and there was blood everywhere. I immediately called down to the front. I need help now. I was new. I was not prepared for this. Blood everywhere. It had soaked down through the duvet, layers of sheets to the mattress. There were bloody handprints everywhere. On the mirrors, on the headboards, on the back of doors, showers, carpet, the kitchenette, in every crack and crevasse of the bathroom, on the shower head, everywhere. Someone had decided to have a finger painting session during that time of the month with their boyfriend. Turns out some brass daughter had got a room while visiting dear old dad and had her Tinder date over. Daughter had enough foresight to tell her parents that she was on her period and may have bled through the bedding. But she was scared and didn't know what to do. When we said her date was accountable too, She claimed that she 100% didn't have someone else in the room with her. It was $1,800 to clean up that mess and replace everything, and dad was losing his mind over it, yelling and screaming the whole time. They kept saying there was no way that it should cost so much, calling us liars. After sitting in and listening calmly, after being screamed at, my boss slid over the pictures to him. From that point on you could hear a pin drop. He got out his checkbook, wrote the check, and quietly left. Edit. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. And a typo. I stayed at a hotel that hosted a Magic the Gathering tournament, was visiting Atlantic City, only realized what it was as I played Magic a decade ago. In the morning as I was leaving, a housekeeper had a room opening and cleaning. He stops me and says, "WTF is this? Is it worth money?" I look in and someone has filled the bathtub nearly to the brim with Land's Commons. My mother was once a housekeeper at a Harrah's casino hotel. She opened up a room and a terrible smell hit her. Apparently a handicapped man staying at the hotel was waiting for his help to show up, but they never did, and his it had overflowed its container and his phone was dead and he couldn't move. She went to go find help and left that day and never came back. Not a housekeeper, but I was a bartender at a Marriott hotel years ago, along with regular bartending duties. I also delivered bar orders as part of room service. One night I received a typical order, wine, beer, from a room that called down to the bar. I brought the drinks to the room and was greeted by an early 50s man wearing a white robe. He greeted me and asked me to place the drinks on a dresser fairly close to door. As I went to place the drinks down, I noticed the bed had between 10 and 13 dildos laid out neatly along the foot of the bed. The sizes ranged from normal to horse. They were evenly spaced and all facing towards the headboard. While he was signing, I made my way to the door, and as soon as he handed me the book I smiled and said, "Thank you. Have a great night." He just smiled and that was it. 0% acknowledgement on his end. Wasn't a housekeeper, but worked as front desk for night shift, 2300-0700, in a small, 20 rooms, hotel plus restaurant. We have a regular customer who used to arrive at 3 to 4 am. Always ringed before arriving cause he demanded help from the staff for his luggage and asked everyone to call him doctor. One night he asked me to take out the TV out of his room. I offered him a TV-less room, but he insisted on just removing the TV. On another time, he arrived alone, as usual, and stayed for 3 or 4 nights. Last night he filed a complaint about someone from the staff sneaking into his room, drugging him, and sleeping with his wife. Dude implied there had been sexual intercourse. The weird part is that he arrived alone, and that night it was the only customer in the whole place. It was only him, the guy working as handyman who was in the restaurant at the time, and me. No one saw him go in or out with anyone. When he left his room, alone, at 4 am I entered to see if everything was in order. He had put the sheets in the tub and were soaking wet. He ripped the pillowcases and tried to flush them in the toilet. There was a lot of red yarn in the floor. No signs of no one else. Bugged me to this day cause I don't know if he was psychotic or what. Other time one of the housekeeping ladies called me cause there was a bed that looked as if Jack the Ripper had killed someone and were covered in blood. Really strange. I'm late to this because I'm working overnight at a hotel tonight and I just woke up. I've been a hotel manager for about 5 years. A year of that was spent in housekeeping, and the worst was a chick who had overdosed on something and smeared it literally all over herself in the bathroom. The smell was indescribable. There were dildos and syringes everywhere too. Her boyfriend tried to call us and say she had just forgotten to take her insulin that night. I think I showered like 10 times after work that day. Most recently the weirdest thing we found was a cat. Somebody had left a cat in his room and trashed it. The cat had no food, no water and no litter box, but was the sweetest little dude ever. The owner called back and tried to get his cat and we lied and said we turned him over to animal services. He's happily living with another manager now. Another time, another manager and I were inspecting rooms and she radioed me to say there was a brown smudge on a pillow and she wasn't sure if it was it or chocolate. She asked me if she should touch it and I said yes. Like an asshole. It was it. I was working through a temp agency for Motel 6, so one of the other workers had a room to clean. The occupants were supposed to be gone. So the worker goes into the room and there's a man tied up in the bed with some type of BDSM outfit on. He was gagged also. She didn't even help him, lol, she just called the cops. He was fine. It was a kink of his, but the other person just left him tied up and took all his things. Not a maid, but a hotel guest. Put on the do not disturb sign. Maid decides to enter anyway while I'm balls deep in my girlfriend. It was quite the mood killer, especially since the maid insisted in cleaning our room because she was here anyway. I was at random party taking place in a suite and I go into the bathroom and see a guy in the bathtub with an entire rotisserie chicken. He looks up at me and sticks out a greasy finger as he finishes chewing and then says, "Don't mind me." Worked a summer job at hotel near Cedar Point back in the early 90s. Went to a room to see if the guest had left without checking out. She checked out alright. Shot herself in the head on the patio. Room was on the 3rd floor. Her blood and brains dripped down 3 floors between the deck slats. Had to keep 3 rooms closed for days afterwards. Lots of power washing and bleach. Almost as bad as the fella who slipped running on the treadmill and caught his twig and berries between the roller and belt. 911 was summoned. Not what I walked into, but the aftermath. 2 very business looking men. Clean cut, amazing manners. 5-star reserves, high class hotel. Stayed for a week. DND sign and door. Left garbage and dirty towels outside door. Walk in. OMG. First I see a puddle of blood in the hall. Turn left into bathroom. Blood and human feces all over the place. Yes, even the ceiling. Freak out. Think someone was murdered. Investigate deeper. Used condoms tied to the lampshades. Blood and feces all in the beds. On the walls. Headboards. Desk. You name it. Condoms galore. Must have been $200 worth of them. Dirty bottles and toys, if you know what I mean. Freaking terrifying. Hazmat came in to save the day. Got a $100 tip. I can't put into words everything I saw that day, but imagine. One time I walked into a room and it was completely covered in red stains. Absolutely everywhere you could see. On the beds, the carpets, the floors, the walls, all over the bathroom, and even a bit on the ceiling. No idea how they managed to do that. At first I thought it may be blood, but then I noticed it reeked of alcohol. They spilled red wine absolutely everywhere. The room had to be shut down and they had to bring up the shampoo machines. I think they may have had to repaint too. Bonus story, that very same day I walked into a room that was very heavily smoked in. The smell was so extremely bad that I couldn't breathe at all. My manager said that it takes at least 5 people chain smoking for at least 12 hours straight to make a room smell as bad as that one did. That also required a machine. And they had to replace the mattresses and curtains. Smoking was not allowed anywhere in the hotel.